Hi, my name is Johanna Pushkar. I am Mike Mylan Pushkar's daughter. This podcast is called the Mylan Pharmaceutical Bleeding Blue. It consists of Mylan Pharmaceuticals, the number one generic company, and the rise and the fall of it. I'd like to read this off you from Wikipedia because there's a lot of questions about my father retiring in 2009. This is about my father. In November 1993, my father was 58 years old. He became the company's chairman and chief executive officer. He served as CEO in 2002 and chairman until 2009, which is when my father was forced out of his company. Following his retirement as CEO, his successor, Robert Coury, drastically cut employees' benefits and blocked Mr. Pushkar from entering the Mylan Morgantown facility and became to regret putting him in charge of the company. So there's the answer to a lot of people's questions. My dad was forced out of his own company. He, in 2003, was diagnosed with liver cancer. In 2004, he had his transplant. My opinion, this was the beginning of the downfall of Mylan. Robert Coury in 1995 came in as a strategic advisor at Mylan. He did not work at Mylan, he was just a strategic advisor. He became CEO of Mylan in 2002 to 2012. He was executive chairman from 2012 to 2016. In 2016, he received $98 million a year. That was also the year of the EpiPen scandal. See the bonding there? He was asked to step down in 2017. 2020, he was reappointed himself as the executive chairman. Robert Coury netted approximately $160 million in total compensation working at Mylan. Robert Coury claims he made Mylan $25 billion between 1995 and 2007. He claims to make Mylan the number one world and the generic pharmaceuticals. That is not true. My father did that in the late 70s, early 80s with Maxide and the New York Stock Exchange. He also says that Mike Pushkar was his mentor. Well, if he's your mentor, I can imagine what it's like for people that aren't. That's just my opinion. 2007, Robert Coury brought in Rajiv Malik from India. My story with Robert Coury is a personal story. I've met Robert Coury, saw him maybe 2-3 times in my life. I was in my dad's office. We were talking, whatever, doing our thing, and Robert Coury came in. Didn't know who he was, didn't really care. Anyways, my dad introduced me to him and just talking, whatever. But you know how when you meet somebody or you're somewhere and you get this really bad vibe? That's what I got when I met Robert Coury. I do not work at Mylan, never did work at Mylan, so I didn't have to deal with him. So 2-3 days later, my father calls me up and said, "Do you remember meeting Robert Coury in my office?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "When I pass away, he will be your financial advisor." I'm thinking, okay, let's see how this is going to pan out. So he said, "Robert will call you in a couple days." And Robert Coury did call me in a couple days. He called me to talk to me about my finances and everything when my father passed away. This is how the meeting consisted of. "Johanna, who of your dad's friends do you like? Who of your dad's friends do you not like? Who do you know the longest?" I'd be honest with you, I lied. It was none of his business. He was supposed to call me about my finances after dad passed away. Mind you, my dad at this time was very healthy. This was, I'd say, probably mid 90s, if around that time, maybe a couple years later than that. Then he kept on asking me, "Well, what is your dad's favorite foods? What does your dad like? What is his sister's names? What sister is he closest to?" Well, by the time he got done, I just said, "You know what? When you're ready to talk to me about what you're supposed to be talking to me about, call me back." And I hung up. I thought that was it. So about 2-3 months later, my father butted heads on something. So Robert Coury calls me up and out of the blue and goes, "So I hear you and your dad are butting heads, huh?" My comment is, "Let me tell you something, you son of a bitch. When you decide to talk to me about my finances, call me back." I hung up on him. I called up my father, and I've done this twice in my life. "You have a decision to make." And he goes, "I'm listening." I said, "Either you take me out of your will or you get rid of Robert Coury." And he goes, "Fair enough." So that was the end of that. And about 2 weeks later, my dad called me up and said, "Johanna, you are on your own when I pass away." And I said, "Dad, I cannot thank you enough." I was waiting for him to ask me why did I call him with this conversation. He never asked me. I lived with my father the last 3 months of his life. We had a lot of conversations, and that was one of them. He asked me, just depleted, and asked me, said, "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" And to this day, I regret it. Would it have made a difference? I have not a clue. I do not know. And I just looked at my dad and I said, "Dad, because you never asked." And he goes, "Fair enough." And that was the end of that conversation. And thank God that was the end of me having to deal with Robert Coury with my finances. Robert Coury in 2007 brought Rajiv Malik in to Mylan Pharmaceuticals. Rajiv, 20 years at Roxbury, an Indian pharmaceutical company, before collapsing due to data fraud and scandals in 2013. He was head of the genetics research and development to the collapse. In 2007 to 2009, Rajiv Malik was head of the Global Technical Operations Executive Vice President and Chief Operations Officer from July 2009 to December 2012. 2013, he was a Mylan board of the directors. And in 2012, he was president of Mylan. Once again, my dad was gone. 8 years, he was 8 years at Mylan, he was president. This is also about the time that American drugs that were very important to us was moved to India. He was executive member of Mylan's BOD by 2013, as well as executive vice president and chief of operations July 9th of December 2012. In 2013, Malik was accused by 45 states of engaging in illegal conspiracy and price fixing of drugs such as the EpiPens and others. This is a quote from Robert Coury about Malik. Quote, "Mylan has a deep faith in the integrity of its presidential Rajiv Malik and stands behind him fully." Unquote. Malik in 2013 excited about the progress that Mylan Pharmaceuticals was making. 2014 through 2016, he made $53.8 million, the second highest ranking executive. Now, with that being said, my father's salary, max, as the co-founder, was $2 million. That is what he allowed himself. The rest of the money went to his employees and went to bonuses. So it just, anything and everything needed to be done. But the money went back to his employees and it went back to the plant. Well, those days ended. In 2018, Malik ordered that Mylan Union to fall in line. Workers will be moved everywhere management wants them. By this time, my dad's management team was either fired or they left. In other words, "I will bury Morgantown. All will go to India, and my people will get their benefits." Viatris lawyer denies Malik ever saying this. But it's kind of odd because that's exactly what happened. In 2007 through 2020, Malik 18 had made in between 2007 and 2020, Rajiv Malik had 18 Mylan manufacturers plants were built or taken to India. 2016, during the EpiPen scandal, Malik made $8.7 million. There's three people in this crookedness, in my opinion. Heather Bresch. She was the CEO of Mylan Pharmaceuticals when the collapse of Mylan happened. How she got her job? Her father, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, asked my father, his daughter needed a job. Do you mind giving her one? She worked her ways up to his dad's secretary and became CEO after he died. Just unbelievable. She was executive director and became CEO from 2012 to 2021. She destroyed Mylan with Robert Coury as chairman and Rajiv Malik as president. My opinion. 2009, Heather became president when my dad was forced out. I saw Heather Bresch. My father was brought into ICU about 3, 4 o'clock. 8 o'clock in the morning, the way that the hospital room was, my dad couldn't see who was walking in the door because that's where the bathroom was. I was leaning against the window, so I could see exactly who was coming in. I see this girl coming in. It looked like a St. John suit, which is a beautiful, beautiful, expensive suit. It's very high quality. I honestly thought she was in a different occupation when I saw her. She had a beautiful business suit on. It was a mini skirt in stilettos. So that kind of tells you where I think she was coming from. I did not know it was Heather Bresch until she said hi to me. With that being said, my dad at that time had prostate cancer and it had got into his bones. He was in a lot of pain. He mentally was sharp as a tack. He was still going out with his friends. He was still having people over to watch football games, etc., etc. To hear my father, you would never know he was sick. To see him, you would think he was sick. She comes in and says hi to me and plops on the corner of his bed. You could see the pain radiating through his body, and he had his hands in fists trying to maintain the pain from her plopping on his corner of the bed. I'm ready to just knock her. Dad just looked at me and it's like, just calm down, Johanna, just whatever. So Heather looks at my dad and very politely doesn't say, how are you doing or anything, says, I have to ask you some questions. Now, this time, I did not know that my father was kicked out of his own company. At this time, I did not even know she was freaking where she was at Mylan. I didn't care. My goal was to take care of my father. So she started ringing off businessmen's names. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, she's got meetings with these men today. She doesn't know anything about them. My father's going, this guy's a nice guy. This is what he does. This is where he works at. I'm just standing there going, this is amazing. This has got to be a joke. So she's there for about 5-10 minutes, very nonchalantly stands up, looks at my dad and goes, hope you feel better, Mike, and walks out. I gave my dad apparently a look. He looked at me and goes, she's not that bad. And I just looked at him and went, really? I left the room to calm down. So that was the last time I saw Heather Bresch. That's also the last time my father saw Heather Bresch, because apparently she was so incompetent, she didn't even know who she was having meetings with. Just my opinion. In 2015, Heather Bresch annual compensation had risen 600% to $18 million. Mind you, this is right before the EpiPen scandal. This is where Robert Coury brought Heather in as CEO. Then we go to Heather's fake diploma from WVU. She received an MBA diploma that she claimed she earned in 1998. In 2008, West Virginia stripped her from her fake diploma. 2015, Heather Bresch replied. She did everything to get her MBA, she thought. Well, when I went to college or even high school and even kindergarten, that when you successfully graduate, you usually have a ceremony. And you're usually invited to the ceremony if you graduated. So doesn't it seem that if you think you graduated with an MBA, that you would have been invited to the ceremony? Just asking. The EpiPen scandal was in 2016, and the EpiPen price rose between 500 and 600%. It went from $93.88 per pen to $608.61 for two. I use the EpiPen. Just saying. In 2016, Heather earned 13.8 million, Rajiv Malik earned 8.7, and Coury netted 98 million. Mind you, the co-founder gave himself $2 million a year, and that was toward the end. In 2017, Mylan paid the federal government $465 million for misclassification of the EpiPen as a generic drug, which allowed it to overcharge Medicaid by $1.27 billion. That's with a B. In 2019, Mylan paid $30 million for fraud by Securities and Exchange. In January of 22, Mylan paid $264 million for the EpiPen settlement. Now, here's my question. Heather Bresch, Robert Coury, and Rajiv Malik, all three were in this scandal. Not one of them ever paid one penny out of their pocket for the EpiPen scandal. It all came out of Mylan Pharmaceuticals. Now, here's the problem. They're bleeding Mylan Pharmaceuticals to the point to where it's going. They knew it. That was the plan, in my opinion. So where all this money is coming from Mylan Pharmaceuticals. But what about the employees? Where do they stand in this? Where's Bleeding Blue at? I'll tell you where they're at. They're losing their jobs. They're losing their bonuses. They're losing their insurance. They're losing my father made sure that every single immediate family member, from husband, wife, child, down to grandparents of someone that worked at Mylan, had everything paid for medically. Guess what? That's gone. Bonuses are gone. Now, will someone please explain to me how the hell that Mylan Pharmaceuticals is paying for all these penalties for the EpiPen scandal? Heather and Coury and Malik are making 13.8 million, 8.7 million, and in 2015, before the scandal, Robert Coury makes 98 million. And not one penny is coming out of their pockets. And then when Heather has to go to Congress, what does she do? She takes the Mylan jet, which of course Mylan paid for. So where in the hell are these employees being stood up for? Why isn't Robert Coury, Heather Bresch, and Rajiv Malik paying for the scandals that they're pocketing all the money for? Hello, are you a Bleeding Blue?
Yes, I am a Bleeding Blue. About 20 years. I started in 1999 and retired in 2019.
So you were with my dad and after my dad?
Yes, I was.
Would you like to tell me what Bleeding Blue means to you?
What Bleeding Blue means to me. I know what your dad meant. He was a great man. He was loved by company people and the union. I mean, the union loved him so much that we even dedicated a bench to him to honor him and what we thought of him. Mylan was a great place to work at for a while.
What do you think changed it?
The leadership when Mr. Pushkar left and the three amigos took over. It went downhill. It went downhill fast. It was no longer about quality and family. It was about the mighty dollar and how much they could make.
Yeah. Were you there when Were you there when they started bringing in the pharmaceuticals in from India?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
It wasn't good. A lot of the products came in dirty. I mean, it had to be screened to remove foreign matter before it could even be ran into the formulas to make the product.
What do you mean dirty?
Dirty had like paper pieces, um, cigarette butts, just dirty.
This was in the medicine? This was in with the tablets or the pills?
Not in the tablets. This was in the raw powders that were shipped in to be manufactured.
Wow. No, was it like that when my dad had it?
No, no. Your dad walked that plant, talked to people, made everything sure everything was going well. If there were any problems, he wanted to know about it, and he took care of anything. But no, we never had that kind of a problem.
I don't I don't I don't know if you would know this answer or not. When my dad was co-founder of Mylan and was at Mylan, with the FDA, were there a lot of write-ups or were there any write-ups?
There was always a write-up, but from the FDA, we never seemed to have a problem. Um, Plant was always cleaned. We were always within the guidelines. We had a good rapport, from what I could tell, with the FDA.
What about after dad left? Were there problems with the FDA or
Yeah, after he left, there was no pleasing the FDA. There was the rooms could never be clean enough because of cross contamination, and yeah, there were a lot of issues with the FDA after that.
and this is medicines that was an American made company that got shipped to India because of Heather Bresch, Robert Coury, and Rajiv Malik, which is from India.
Yes,
And now this is how and this is the medicines that's going out to the American public.
yes, exactly. Yeah, like I said, it no longer became about quality and family and safety. It was about moving it through fast as you could, making the dollar any way possible. And it
Wow.
wasn't even about being affordable medicine to the public anymore. Great example was the EpiPen.
Yeah, I use the EpiPen. Speaking of the EpiPen, and I have an issue with this. I still have to buy the 2 pack, and I still pay between $500 and $600 a year. And that's, of course, if I don't need them. And of course, if I need them, then I have to buy more within that year. I thank God, due to my parents, both of them, I can afford this. What infuriates me is that the families. Okay, listen. Here's a good example. Let's take a bleeding blue family that needs to use the EpiPen. They've lost their bonuses. They've lost their jobs. They need to pay for the EpiPen. These people can't afford what they used to take care of.
Exactly. Exactly. We used to make the product, and it gets to where you can't even afford to buy the product to save a life. Yeah, and that it all greed on the three amigos.
I give you credit for calling three amigos because I've heard they've been called three of a lot of things, but I think amigos is the kindest I've heard so far.
Well, trying to be kind. I don't know who all will be listening, and
Well, hopefully the whole world.
but yeah,
Well, I thank you so much for calling in. I hope this gives you a little bit of peace of mind. It does me, as sad as pissed off as I am. It does calm me down just a little bit.
Yes, it's a nice thing you're doing.
Well, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for Dad's family that never had a voice. Because everyone is talking about the three amigos and the EpiPen and the fake diploma and the bad quality of medicine. And unfortunately, that you guys were not to be rude, but you guys were dismissed by everybody, and it's not right and it's not fair because you guys are the ones that went through the hell.
Right.
So
Your dad treated us as family, and the three, we are just a number. We are disposable. We forget the knowledge and the years of dedication to that company. We became disposable objects to them.
yeah, well, well, of course, I'm pretty sure you know this. My dad had a lot of puns, but as my dad used to say, and I used to hear this a lot, being his daughter, what goes around comes around.
My name's Joseph G. Guz. My date of hire of Mylan Pharmaceuticals was July 19th of 1999. And in my time at Mylan Pharmaceuticals, a little over 22 years, I hired in as a fifth mill compactor. I've done blending, tablet press, fluid bed operations twice, weighing department, packaging line, and coating operations as well.
Wow. Would you like to tell me a little bit of your experience with my dad?
I'm not so sure we have enough time for me to remain grateful and express my gratitude to Mr. Pushkar, but I'll do my best today to try.
You say whatever you want to say.
Upon being hired, I was interviewed by Marilyn Harrington and Mr. Ogden, Bill Ogden, and they told me that Mr. Pushkar and his staff would provide everything that I needed. Only thing I needed to do was show up to work, be teachable, and have a willingness to learn. And my insurance, my paycheck, my benefits would all be taken care of. And to this day, as we speak, I'm grateful for Mr. Pushkar and his staff. They didn't lie to me, unlike some of the others that came years after. I served as the local 8957 United Steelworkers local union president and did my very best to try to preside over 974. Actually, it was 1,374 until we got the first initial layoff notice in 2018 from Scott Marshall at the Waterfront Marriott. I have a lot to say. I'm rather long-winded.
That's fine.
I'm very explicit about details. I'm fortunate and grateful for our First and Second Amendment in our Constitution of the United States. I love my freedom of speech and I love my opportunity to bear arms. However, when it came time to people capitalizing on the gratitude and the opportunity that Mr. Pushkar and his staff created for us at Mylan Pharmaceuticals, the people who came in following Mr. Pushkar, namely Robert Coury, Heather Bresch, and Rajiv Malik, they didn't use any type of arms. They just haphazardly helped themselves to the buffet of finances created by Mr. Pushkar, Mr. Panos, and Mr. DeBone over the past 5 decades of success that Mylan brought to the pharmaceutical generic industry. The bottom line is, for me, today, I still remain just a little bit upset and a little bit bitter and a little bit frustrated as to how this all took place. In 2002, we knew that changes were probably going to come in the way of corporate structure. We weren't sure just about how or what. Fast forward to 2007, 2009, contract negotiations began to talk of 5 years and 6 years rather than 3 or 4 years. And then at that time, of course, the infamous, or rather infamous, what do I want to call him, the corporate raider, Robert Coury, stepped in at the helm at Mylan Pharmaceuticals, and it seemed like it wasn't but a matter of days after he became chairman of the board that Mr. Pushkar's oil painting in our grand foyer of our main entrance to our facility on Chestnut Ridge Road was taken down hastily and never to be seen again.
I don't know if you know this or not, but if you look at a lot of articles, I guess you could say, and actually for a company that I will not mention that Robert Coury founded, since the article has been changed, but it talked about he mentored my father and what he did for Mylan. And this is about the founder of another company that he owns, or that he, whatever. But how can you say that my father's your mentor and do what you did to his company? Just a question.
In my opinion, based on what I saw and what I experienced, who needs a $98 million bonus or salary incentive?
That was 2015, right before the EpiPen scandal came out.
Yeah. Let's back up here. The EpiPen cost Mylan Pharmaceuticals a $500 million fine, somewhere in the neighborhood of $463 million thereabouts. Now, that came out of Mr. Pushkar's account that he developed and built up at Mylan Pharmaceuticals. That had no bearing and that had no impact on any type of revenue that Robert Coury generated. That came out of Mylan Pharmaceuticals' account. That fine was paid by Mylan Pharmaceuticals. Later, not too long ago, around 2019, 2020, maybe just a little bit beyond that, Heather Bresch, in their unwillingness to put forward testimony, they were willing to pay another $250 million or thereabouts. We're talking about $750 million that between Rajiv Malik, Heather Bresch, and Robert Coury initiated these fines to be levied against Mylan Pharmaceuticals. Now, just when you were talking about mentoring, I never knew Mr. Pushkar to mentor anybody to walk into $750 million worth of fines by the federal government.
Well, I'll just listen to this. 2017, Mylan paid the federal government $465 million. This is for the EpiPen scandal, for misclassification of the EpiPen as a generic drug, which allowed it to overcharge Medicaid by $1.27 billion. 2019, Mylan paid $30 million for fraud by Securities and Exchange. And January 24th of 22, Mylan paid $264 million for the EpiPen settlement. Pfizer paid in total $345 million. So there's your statistics. But I'm with you on this. How much money for all these fines did Heather Bresch, Robert Coury, or Rajiv Malik, how much of the money that they've given themselves as being head honchos of Mylan, how much penalties did they pay for the EpiPen?
They paid none.
Exactly.
They even bonused. They issued themselves. It was a strange ordeal that took place. I just happened to be an MBA grad at West Virginia University.
So did Heather.
By the way, I'm not so sure that she ever received her graduate degree, but Joseph G. Guz had to attend classes, and I earned my degree, and I have it in my house, as well as a second master's degree from West Virginia University, where it was mandated that I attend and participate in class. I didn't get the privileges of Heather Bresch, Heather Manchin did.
Well, you're not the senator's daughter.
The senator couldn't even remember her graduation date. This would have been perhaps as phony as it would have been her first graduate degree, but yet he can't recall anything about it.
Isn't that amazing?
Let's talk about the ramifications of 6 to 8 professors losing their jobs, an attorney who was the school president at the time by the name of Mike Garrison. Do you know that Mike Garrison's mom and Uncle John Manchin, they were friends way back in the day? Yeah, Mike Garrison's mom and Uncle John, Joe Manchin's father, who is Heather Manchin's grandfather, they were friends back in the day. I wonder how Mike Garrison got there to begin with, but yet he was the fall guy who lost his job to begin with because of the Heather Bresch scandal. And I'm pretty sure, if record proves itself right, she still did not get awarded her phony MBA degree. As a matter of fact, we had to attend class. I guess perhaps she didn't.
Well, what I don't understand is back in 2015, she swore up and down that she thought she took all the classes to graduate. Now, here's the funny part. Admissions and records don't even have her in the records of her even taking any classes. There is no accountability of paying for these classes. And on top of that, she was never invited to a ceremony. I mean, if my butt off for an MBA, I'm going to be at my ceremony. And I got news for you. My dad would know that date.
So the bottom line is, for me, going back, not to toot my horn, but being an MBA graduate with a master's degree from WVU, do you know the name of the facility that we attended classes in on Tuesday and Thursday evening?
No.
The Mylan Pushkar Learning Center.
Oh.
I want to clearly state that the information that I'm providing is true and accurate, and I am holding sole responsibility for what comes out of Joseph G. Guz's mouth. Let me give you a little scenario in 2005 of what Stu Williams and Patricia Sunseri did. And they were people that sat on the board. They knew the writing was on the wall. Patricia Sunseri and Stu, as your dad would call him, Stu, they walked away. They resigned. They remained a bit intact for some of Mylan's executive and corporate operations, and they played a minimal part, but they resigned as their board members. They didn't want any part of it, and they knew it was coming. And then let me read this little caption. See, a lot of these things that occurred when I was in the Union Hall, and I did a little bit of research periodically, like day to day, I saved it all. I have it all saved, all printed, and it's all part of the United Steelworkers. And when I asked Fred Redmond from the United Steelworkers if I could have it, he said he didn't have any use for it, so I kept all the documents. It's called the waterfall, Johanna. Multiple former Mylan workers say that Pushkar's departure was the point where they stopped feeling like family and started feeling like numbers. Under him, they received Christmas bonuses and other perks, which were stripped by later leadership, namely Robert Coury, Heather Bresch, and Rajiv Malik. It got even worse after Mr. Pushkar's death in 2011. This is a person by the last name of Williams who quoted this. By 2012, Coury was an executive chairman of the board. Heather Bresch, who's the daughter of U.S. Senator Joe Manchin, and started at the company as a data entry clerk in 1992, became CEO, and Rajiv Malik, who was the CEO of Matrix before Mylan bought that company in 2007, became the president. There's the Three Stooges, or the Three Musketeers.
By Bleeding Blue earlier, she called them the Three Amigos.
Well, for us, in Spanish, an amigo is a friend, and they were anything to us and to our company but friends. They had an agenda with an open checkbook that Mr. Pushkar and his staff had established and, gathered over decades of successful business, and they bled everything out of it that they could.
Wait a minute, Joe, wait a minute. Let me stop you for a minute. Yes, they bled it dry, and it speaks for itself, but this is what pisses me off. They treated the employees like shit. They took away their name tags. They took away their bonuses. They became a number. They didn't know from one day to another if they were going to be fired. They knew when they walked in and they had a box and said, get your stuff and get out. And they were very rudely escorted out. That's what, it's bad enough to destroy the number one generic company that my father and his Bleeding Blues designed. But to go out of your way to think you're hot crap, my opinion, because you need bodyguards. My father never had a bodyguard in his life. And then Mylan is paying for the freaking bodyguards.
Do you realize that later Robert Coury signed his own check literally to not use the corporate jet to the tune of over $1 million one year because he didn't log a certain amount of corporate jet hours? He wrote himself over or nearly $1 million check, something to the tune of $960,000 because he hadn't used the jet that much.
Well, you can Google this or even look in the past history of Dominion Post. He used the Mylan jet to send his son and his band to California on the company jet, amongst other things.
Yeah, his son had a rapper band, or he was some kind of a singer or so. I don't know. We
Google it; it's there.
As Heather Bresch told Johnny Johnson one time at a meeting in our cafeteria, we're not Mylan anymore.
No,
we are the new Mylan, and if you don't like it here, folks, and there was a cafeteria full of workers now. This was day shift, a cafeteria full of workers, and this is exactly what she said. If you don't like the new Mylan, nobody has a gun to your head.
Well, I would, my boyfriend worked there, and he came home one day furious. And of course, Dad's not there, blah, blah. I guess, Heather, I shouldn't say this because this is hearsay, so maybe you can back me up on this because I'm pretty sure you know this. That Heather flat out, someone asked, are we getting a bonus this year? And Heather flat out, with her security guards with her, made the comment, do you want a job or do you want a bonus?
That's exactly accurate. That is true. That's a true statement.
Yeah. So I mean
That's a true stuff. Boy, her check sure did sign in cash, didn't it?
yeah.
They cashed their checks, didn't they?
This is what I don't understand. And I do understand it. It just pisses me off. How do you take the number one drug company in the United States that makes life-saving drugs and donates medicine to third world countries like antibiotics, penicillin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And everything that is involved in Mylan, from Post-its to laundry, is all done in Morgantown because my dad supported the small business as much as, he just supported him. And if it couldn't come out of Morgantown, then it came out of the United States. He very rarely, if any time, got anything outside of America. How the hell do you go from that to getting medicine from India that comes into Mylan that has blood in it, hair in it, metal in it, cigarettes in it? How does this happen?
Well, enter the name Rajiv Malik and enter the name Robert Coury, and you can also enter the third corporate raider named Heather Bresch. They weren't going to do things successfully the way Mr. Pushkar and his staff did things. They consistently outsourced. We went to an SAP outsourced supply system in the maintenance cage, in the supply cage, and it failed us miserably. Tom Teeter, who was a supervisor in the maintenance cage, he had, and I want to say God rest his soul because I believe Mr. Teeter is no longer with us, but he had a supply company that we patronized as a corporation for years, and we readily received all of our cleaning products, or most of our cleaning products, through Tom Teeter's company. You know what they did to him? He got a box to pack up his things. They fired him, and then first they kicked his company out of the supply chain to Mylan, and then they fired him, and I think later Mr. Teeter may have taken his life. I don't know that to be 100% true. I apologize if I'm inaccurate, but I think he may have taken his life. And I want to mention this also. I sat at the helm of the local 8957 United Steelworkers Union office, and we buried people after they lost their jobs who could not adjust and could not see things in a changing way that these three stooges or corporate raiders were doing to us. They were upsetting lives, families, mortgages, house payments, car payments. Kids had to be uprooted from schools, local schools, taken elsewhere. We did a Excel spreadsheet. It is an estimated, Johanna, it is an estimated conservative $260 million per annum per year that has been taken out of the Morgantown, Fairmont, Clarksburg, and local nearby PA area. $260 million worth of revenue taking out of that Tri-City and a little bit of the PA area.
This is one thing people don't understand. And I get it in a way, kind of. People that don't live in Morgantown are not affiliated with Bleeding Blue or any of that situation. This is how they look at this. Okay, a generic pharmaceutical company closed down. Big deal. Now, here's the problem with that. People can't afford to go out to eat anymore. People can't afford to take their kids to the doctors anymore. People can't afford to buy groceries. Guess what? Your taxes are going up because of this crap. So then you've got that. Then let's get outside of Morgantown, okay? Your medicine now is coming from India that came into Mylan that had the cigarettes in them, that had the plastic in them, that had the metal in them. Now we're giving that to your kids. That's why this is American freaking problem. It's not just Morgantown. It's not Mylan. This is the whole freaking community of the United States because of 3 assholes.
I think there were still some pending cases in Louisiana and maybe North Dakota and some of those states in our continental U.S. here. I think there was still some cases even all the way up to last year or the year before, 2021, regarding Rajiv Malik. He is the subject. He and Robert Coury, Graham Baxi, and some of the other companies in India are the subjects in Catherine Eban's Bottle of Lies book. I don't know if anybody within our hearing distance are good readers or they're interested in reading, but there's a book called Bottle of Lies.
Hey, Joe, I'm holding the book up for everyone to see what it looks like.
You only have to go about 20 or 25 pages, and you'll read Rajiv Malik's name in there, and Mylan Pharmaceuticals, unfortunately, Robert Coury. Those people are in that book, and Catherine Eban is the author, and I have a good business relationship with Catherine Eban. She helped our cause as much as she could.
I've talked to Catherine Eban, and actually, to be honest with you, she came out, I think it's in 2021, the best Vanity Fair article about Mylan Pharmaceuticals. I mean, she's just, the article's fantastic. You have to read it. It's called Joe, I think if I remember correctly, it's called Joe Manchin Outsourcing Steel Workers. I don't remember.
Joe Manchin ghosting union workers or union labor, I believe, something to that effect.
Absolutely. That's article. And I'm part of that article. I'm in that article.
Front cover of Vanity Fair.
Absolutely. And it's, but for people that want more information, that's in the article to go to because it explains everything. And if you're not a reader, and I'm not a reader, it explains everything, and you're not there for 15, 20 minutes. She's very good. I kudos to her. She did an excellent job. She did an excellent investigation, and it's honesty through and through. So kudos to her.
I agree. Well, I'm getting ready to cut this short, Joe. If there's anything else you'd like to talk about real quick, or any comments you want to, let me ask you one question. What does bleeding blue mean to you?
It still hits me right in the gut, and it still hits me right in the heart. We're Mylan through and through. We're not another company that they later gave the name Beatrice to that facility. We're Mylan. We were always Mylan. We will always be Mylan, and Mylan will never change in our eyes, in our opinions, in our values. We stood for Mylan because Mylan stood for us. You know, in 2015, 2016, when the FDA came in and they caught Rajiv Malik giving orders to people to shred documents, and the shit hit the fan in the laboratory, and the FDA agents spread out all over the place, the writing was on the wall. In the end, they took advantage of a grateful and a generous heart.
Yeah.
And a staff that knew what success meant and how to keep it. They took advantage of a man who had a heart for mankind, and he took care of the people that were with him and those who even were coming behind him. He took care of people. I go by down Spruce Street, and I see the Mylan Push Car Health Right. I see several for the Aquatic Center. Mr. Pushkar hasn't left us in spirit. He'll live forever. He'll live forever.
Hey, Bleeding Blue, how you doing, dear?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Could you do me a favor? Could you tell me how many years you worked at Mylan and what the years were?
I worked there for 20 years from 2000 to 2022. 20.
Wow. So you were there for a while.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And at the beginning, I absolutely loved it when your dad was there. It's the best thing ever.
Can you tell me what Bleeding Blue means to you and how things were with Dad and after Dad?
Things with Dad were wonderful. He would walk the plant and talk to people and wanted to know how everybody was, how their family was, how their job was. And he really cared. I mean, he even did this on midnight shift with the people. And then Heather came one time, and she would not walk the plant because she had to wear a hairnet.
Oh, Jesus.
But your dad did it a lot. He wore a hairnet and was proud of it. Yes, yes. Everybody loved seeing him come in. They loved it.
They say that he knows everyone's names and their kids' names. And
He knew my name. He didn't even know me, but he knew my name.
wow.
He would call. It was like if he found out your name one time, he knew it.
Yeah, he was good at that.
Yeah, but we did not have names on our uniforms. Did not.
Did you when you were with my dad? You had names on the uniforms. Did you guys have names after my dad was gone?
Oh no, no. We just had a big room full of uniforms, and everybody just went in, picked one up, and put it on. There was no names, no names.
So they stripped you guys from your names after my dad was gone.
Yeah.
That's sad because it's something so simple.
Well, yeah, and he probably wanted it that way, and then once he left, and you know what? I don't know if this is true or not, but is it true that he was not allowed back on that property?
Yes, it was. He was forced out by Robert Coury. You can look it up on Wikipedia. You can look up Mylan Pushkar or Mylan Mike Pushkar, which is what he went by, and it will tell you on there that he was kicked out. And it also states, which I heard my father for the last 3 months of his life telling me personally and his friends the worst mistake he ever made was meeting Robert Coury.
Got those people there. If it wasn't for your dad, they wouldn't be there.
Yep, that's true. Well, Heather got her job because Senator Joe Manchin, her father, asked Dad if Dad would give his daughter a job. That's how Heather got hers. Rajiv Malik, Robert Coury brought in 2007 during an Indian scandal. So there's that topic. And then Robert Coury was introduced to my dad by a friend. And a lot of people ask me, do you have problems with your dad's friend? I said, absolutely not. I said, it was my dad's decision to bring him in. But with Bleeding Blue, what a lot of people don't know is the Robert Coury that my father saw and the Robert Coury that everybody else saw were two different Robert Courys.
Oh, I'm sure they were. I've heard that who gave the FDA the finger one time, Robert Coury did, and that made it harder on the employees from the FDA.
Oh, yeah. Well, I
He
mean,
didn't care. He did not care whether we had a job or not. It didn't matter to him.
well, I can't say anything because I did not work there, even though I wish I could say something, but I can't. Uh, yeah, Robert Coury, Rajiv Malik, and Heather Bresch, if you look at their on their salaries, speaks volume.
But he didn't even have a damn degree.
Well, no, that's not true. She had a degree, but it was not real.
Sure, she got one, but her dad said he couldn't remember going to her graduation. On the news where it said that, this was on TV, Joe Manchin said his daughter Heather was going to be his political advisor.
Yes. As my father used to say, with one of his favorite puns, is a leopard does not change its spots. So that kind of explains that. Well, I'm glad you were a bleeding blue. I'm glad you're still a bleeding blue. And will you do me a favor and tell me what bleeding blue means to you?
It means we were a family. That whole place was a family. That when your dad was there, it was wonderful, wonderful to work for. And when he left, it was pure hell. The bleeding blue is, to me, going from great to bad.
But are you guys still a family?
Yes. Yes, we are. We have a Facebook page and we're on it all the time and talk all the time.
Dad might have been gone, but his company, meaning the inside the family, the bleeding blue family, is still there for him.
Yep, they sure are. They will always be there for him. Always. Listen, I have one more question.
Sure.
Did you hear, I don't know if this is true or not, but I think it is because I think I saw it on the news also, that they are changing the name of the WVU stadium?
I think right now that's in limbo. And I'll be honest with you, bleeding blue, I am not going to touch that one.
Well, you know what? As much money as he gave to WVU, and now they're thinking about changing the name, I think that's horrible. Absolutely horrible. If the truth.
Yep, I just, like I said, bleeding blue, I'm not going to touch that one. We'll see what happens with that one.
Yeah, well, I hope nothing. Hope nothing. I just figured you would know something about if it was true or not.
I'm pleading the fifth at this moment.
He's given them enough money. It should stay. It should never be changed.
Well, I got news for you. Mylan Pharmaceuticals, when Dad was there, also donated $6 million to WVU.
See?
So it wasn't just Dad personally. Actually, personally, Dad donated $22 million to WVU. And this is arts and sciences and scholarships. Everyone thinks it's the Mountaineer Field. That was only part of it. It went to their scholarships that kids are academic scholarships now that are still being used from the money that my father donated. But altogether, I think it was $22 million. And Mylan Pharmaceuticals, I think was $6 million throughout the time that my dad was alive. So, well, Bleeding Blue, I thank you so very much. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, I just wish things didn't turn out like they did. I mean, people don't have jobs, people have families, people have kids. You know, it's sad. It's sad.
It is sad. It is sad. But we, you guys still have each other, so that, got that one.
We talk to each other, we meet with each other. We're still smiling.
I'm glad to hear that. Your Mike's smiling, you mean?
Oh, yes.
Could you please tell me how long or how many years and what years that you worked at Mylan?
I started late. I only had 4 years in. I came in 2014 and was laid off. Lost my job in 2018.
So you were not there when my dad was there?
No, but I've met your cat throughout Morgantown the years that I lived up there.
Was he the same? How do I put this? As the blue blood, as the bleeding blue describes my father, you seeing my father outside of Mylan, was he the same person or was he a different kind of person?
No, I think he was a great person. I think he was the same person. He treated everybody like everybody was equal. He didn't care on profit, and if you were rich, poor, had lived in a mansion, lived in a little house, he treated you as an equal. And from the stories I heard and from a little bit I know about him, he was that way inside the Milan plant, big time. With his employees, everyone felt respected by their boss, by Mike. And you don't find that in today's world where a company takes care of their employees and treats them as equals instead of robots.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that people that are higher up, if you want to call it, how they take credit for where they're at, but actually they have a rude awakening because they are there because of their employees.
Yes,
Because
I
if they
am.
didn't have their employees, they wouldn't be driving those fancy cars and having the fancy houses that they have. But in time, they forget this.
Yes. And it happens so much everywhere nowadays. And Mike Car was like one of the few companies out there today that still believes in the value of the employees.
Yeah, he did. Let me ask you a question. By you being coming in after my dad, and you're still bleeding blue, did the bleeding blue family accept you even though you weren't one of my dad's employees?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, just like any job, you always have that handful of employees that just think they are it. But overall, yeah, they treated everyone, all of us that came in. There was a big hiring around that time, and they accepted all of us. Of course, we all had to prove ourselves that we can do the job, and we are them. But other than that, yeah, yeah.
Do you mind telling me your personal opinion on what it was like to work for Malik, Robert Coury, and Heather Bresch?
It was not the same as it was for Mark Car, my understanding. Like we discussed on Treating Equals, we didn't see much of Corey or Heather. I mean, I worked afternoon shift, so I've seen probably Heather twice in the 4 years, but you could tell it was ran more of a business and not as a family when I came in. You can tell that the supervisors over us had a lot more to deal with. Under Heather and Corey, um, from what I heard versus Mike, where Mike would help and try to help figure out issues at the time. Heather and Corey just wanted results.
Yeah, good or I mean, no matter what, it was just the results, not worrying on how the results came out. I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, from what my understanding, and they needed, if it was broke, they wanted it fixed. They don't care how it got fixed, but they wanted more pressure on the supervisors, I think, because the supervisors, just like employees, we still had to follow the guidelines to make sure everything was done right, because we are dealing with prescription medication. But from you can tell they were a lot more stressed than they were under Mike.
You mean the FDA?
Yeah, the FDA, like they came in, had an inspection, and found things wrong or whatever. They were just all over the supervisors, as in, what did you do wrong? You need to fix this. And like I said, they wanted to know the results. I don't think they were really too worried about how they fixed it to a certain extent. But of course, with it, they FDA involved, you have to follow guidelines. You have to have the timeline, of plan A to Z and follow that. And of course, Heather and Robert Coury would always want it done this second, where Mike would help and be with him and fix the problem. They just wanted the answers. Because especially the last time the FDA was there prior to the 18 layoff, there was several strikes against Morgantown. It was almost like they were out to get Mylan's location in Morgantown. And I know there was a lot of stuff going on around Heather and with Congress and this, that, and I think someone probably upset somebody or something, because there was a lot of issues that FDA left, I think it was 13 pages or 23 to 32 strikes against the location. that they needed to fix.
It was a lot more than that.
I just remember it was a bunch.
Yeah, it was it was a lot more pages than that. But and it's sad because when my dad had Mylan, it they were never written up. There were never problems. I do know this for a fact that to make sure that everything was up and up with Mylan Pharmaceuticals when my dad had it, he hired a gentleman from the FDA to work for Mylan to make sure that everything was on the up and up. So that was my dad's Mylan. And then you go to this mess. And like you said, they didn't care. And Heather and Robert Coury's name is put together all the time. It's not Heather or Robert, it's Heather and Robert.
Yeah, and that's how it was. I worked there. You didn't hear the one name without the other, even though Heather stepped in that position. Robert was still part of the Mylan family, as in, he just moved over to the board of directors, my understanding. So it wasn't like he out of Mylan. He was still involved.
Yeah, he just made her the fall guy. My opinion.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I worked in packaging, and there you could tell, even the 4 years I was there, you could tell it was a different atmosphere, and you could tell it was getting worse, and you could tell something was coming. Just none of us knew exactly what it was. Our last contract that we signed, they were 3-year contracts, and all of a sudden the stipulation was to make it a 5-year. That told us something that Molly wanted to do something before the next contract would come up. And lo and behold, before the next contract came up is when the big layoff and shutdown happened.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, if you're in packaging, then did you see shipments that came in from India?
We did. India was having issues of their own with FDA over there, and
Yeah, they were. Sorry.
it was like the last month or two prior to the layoff. We had this humongous shipment. I can't even tell you how many lots of it was, but it was pre-packaged. If I'm correct on here, metformin, and we had to dump every bottle that was sent to us, inspect it, and then we rebottle it and relabel the bottle. So we never did hear exactly why, but I know, when we were inspecting, that stuff was found in the bottles. That might have been the reason, or we always thought it was just to get the India name off of the label, because when we relabeled them, they had the Morgantown location on the label, not India.
Wow. So this medicine is coming from India. They put American label on God. They put on Mylan. So people that are getting these medicines in the United States, they think they're getting medicines that are made in America that was at one time top quality.
That's how we thought, because it's like, why are they not putting the India label location back on it? Because it was a Mylan location, but when we relabeled them, it had the Morgantown location, not the India one. So we didn't like that too much, especially with the issues they were having with on their own with FDA.
Wow.
We're just employees, so we did our jobs, and 3 shifts for a good month, if not longer, dumped and rebottled all of this product.
Wow. Well, I thank you so much for calling. I'm glad to talk to you, Bleeding Blue. I love saying that word, Bleeding Blue. I thank you so very much, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you for this opportunity. Even though I was there on it for 4 years, I felt a part of the Mylan family, and I always think of all my fellow coworkers I lost their job over also.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. So, well, listen, you take care, and I thank you so very, very much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.